Sometimes feel like, especially this year, I've noticed it so much. I've been in like different shops or at events or watched things on the TV, and I notice how the way they speak about Christmas or demonstrate Christmas is very different to the one that we should know and we know to be Christmas. And I think that sometimes can take our minds away from the true meaning. I'm sure most of you have heard the Christmas story many, many times. And we know about Mary and Joseph. And we know about the manger, the shepherds and the angels. But sometimes familiarity, thank you, Dad, can make us miss the wonder. Okay, so this week, Gary shared something interesting. He said, remember, at one point, Jesus, the Son of God, was no bigger than a pin's head in his mother's womb. Now that's like tiny. It's so small. Our God, Jesus, the one who made heavens and earth, made himself that small and very, very vulnerable. Baby Jesus looked like every other baby. He didn't glow. He didn't arrive with a crown, thankfully. There was nothing outwardly remarkable about him. He probably cried when he was hungry. He needed to be held. He depended completely on Mary and Joseph. If you had walked past that stable, you probably wouldn't have thought that that's God. And yet the Bible tells us that this ordinarily looking baby was anything but ordinary. John tells us, through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. The hands that one day gripped Mary's fingers were the hands that formed the stars. The lungs that learned to breathe Bethlehem's air were the lungs that spoke the universe into being. And yet he chose weakness. The Bible explains in Philippians chapter 2, though he was God, he did not consider himself equally with God, something to be used as his advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being born in human likeness. Jesus did not stop being God, but he laid aside his rights. He didn't cling to power. He didn't insist on comfort. He didn't demand glory. Instead, Jesus stepped down. He left beautiful heaven. He exchanged glory for humility. He made himself tiny. This wasn't an accident, nor was it a last-minute rescue plan. This was God's heart on display, God's plan all along. We might ask why a baby? Why did he not arrive as a king? Why not appear fully grown? Why not rule with strength from the start? Because God didn't want to come. Because God wanted to come close. Jesus didn't just visit humanity, he joined it. He experienced life from the very beginning. He knew dependence. He knew vulnerability. He knew what it was like to grow, to learn, to wait. There is no part of a human's life that Jesus cannot understand because he entered it fully. When we say God understands, we don't mean that in a distant sort of understanding. We mean God understands because he lived it. But the manger is not the end of the story. Jesus was born as a baby so that Jesus the Lamb could die on the cross. That's why Christmas always points to Easter. The smallness of the manger leads to the suffering on the cross. Philippians continues with, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself. He became obedient to death, even death on the cross. Jesus made himself nothing so that he could give everything. The hands that once reached up to Mary were later stretched out on the cross. The body that once lay in a feeding trough was later laid in a tomb. And he did this willingly. Why? Because of love. Sometimes people imagine God as a distant, angry, or uninterested. But when we look at Jesus, we see exactly what God is like. This is the God who steps down. This is God who moves towards brokenness, not away from it. This is a God who chooses humility over power. If we ever wonder whether God cares, look at the baby in the manger. If we ever wonder whether God sees your weakness, look at Jesus making himself weak. If you ever wonder whether you matter to God, remember that he was willing to become small for you. Jesus did not become human in general. He became human for us. He did this because he loves people, you and me. He did this because he wants people, you and me, to be part of God's family. Jesus didn't come to forgive sins. He came to restore relationships. He came so that we wouldn't just be rescued, but welcomed. Not tolerated, but accepted. Through Jesus, God says, you belong. Philippians 2. So how should we respond to that? Philippians 2 doesn't just tell us what Jesus did, it tells us how to live in response. It begins with, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ. If Jesus was willing to make himself nothing, what does that mean for us? It means choosing humility over pride. It means serving instead of insisting. It means loving even when it costs us. Because we already have to. Not because we have to, but because we already been loved like that. So when we think about baby Jesus, we're not just remembering a sweet scene. We are seeing the deepest truth about God. The truth that made everything. He made himself nothing. The God who rules heaven came to earth. The God who deserves all glory chose love instead. He did it so that you and I could be part of God's family. Now I had a slide from Angus. I sent this slide to Angus at 10:30. So thank you so much, Angus, for getting this together. This is something that Mum showed me a month or so back, and we spoke about it at a deacon's meeting. And it's similar to what we discussed here, but I will just read it out again. Baby Jesus looked like every other baby, except the Bible says this. Jesus gave up his place with God and made himself nothing. Jesus left beautiful heaven. He made himself tiny. He was born as a baby. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus, who made everything, made himself nothing. Jesus stepped down to this earth. He became a baby. So we were just going to gather in small groups with the people around us and think about discuss what this means to us and how this makes us feel. And